Okay, good morning. I just thought I'd reshoot this Optus video because it's getting a few views and I wasn't happy 100% with the last effort with the video quality. Now, what I was saying before was that Optus have prepared a submission to the Senate committee and it's now elucidated exactly what happened, and it has a great meaning and great application in your network, my network, your organisation, my organisation. When the Optus network went down, there was a lot of confusion about why don't they have a redundant backup networking system, or words to that effect. Various experts were put on the interviews, from the chief of the cybersecurity centre in Western Australia to other pundits, and no one could really answer the question. Now the question's just been answered very, very clearly by Optus themselves. They've done an excellent submission and they've clearly told the issue. The issue was caused by, the issue that triggered it but didn't bring the network down was a change or an upgrade of software or routing at the Singapore end. Now, because the configuration was changed in the hardware, that brought a number of border gateway protocol or extended area gateway protocol updates which flooded the own Optus network as it automatically reconfigured. Now the problem is that they have homogenized their network on Cisco hardware, which is excellent hardware. I use it myself. But if you over-homogenize your network and you put exactly the same hardware on your redundant network or your redundant system, then you're at the mercy of any design faults in the hardware or bugs or black swans. And that's exactly what happened. The updates came from the, I'll try and give you some interposed shots of a border gateway update table being displayed. Now, bear in mind, I'm not a network engineer and this is just amateurish and it's just a simulation, all right? But what happened, from the Singapore end, routing updates flooded in. The Cisco routers couldn't cope with the extent and the pressure on them by these hundreds, maybe millions of routing updates to their tables. The large change in Singapore triggered a massive reconfiguration of the routing tables, okay? And all they did was just shut down to protect themselves, and that's completely normal, okay? The issue was that the design of Optus's network was obviously not independently verified. They've obviously got Cisco sales engineers who've designed the network, So obviously if there's an implicit weakness, not a bug, or an implicit wrong default setting, then no matter if you have a completely redundant network, that weakness is going to propagate into your redundant network. So the issue was very simple. They should have had a section of their redundant network based on a different hardware platform. Because the odds are, if they'd had a section of their redundant network, not based on Cisco, high-end Cisco routers, but high-end Juniper routers, Brocade, I believe they make fairly good, if they do make network routers, Hewlett-Packard, or even legacy Bay networks, then in all probability they wouldn't have been affected by the same hardware fault. Well, actually not a fault, but a design limitation. And even if the Cisco routers had shut down completely to protect themselves, which they did, the fault would not have been propagated into the network, because even if half of their reserve redundant network was Cisco and went down, I would suggest at least 50% of the redundant network be based on a completely different hardware platform. So if they'd used heterogeneity in their hardware, we wouldn't have had the issue. And I believe their network would have stayed up and it wouldn't have had the catastrophic loss. So the issue, which I think is in page 11 of my paper, I've discussed, right? And you'll see me interposing some shots here of a mid-range HP 2650 switch interfacing with a Cisco ISR router. Now they're not cutting edge, they're not super high end, but it just shows you that if you've got HP or Brocade or Juniper or another respective provider interfacing into your Cisco network, but part of a discrete redundant network, you will not be affected by a black swan. So it wasn't really a bug. You've got to remember this, routers shut down temporarily to protect themselves. And no one knew what was going on. You've heard the interviews, and basically the experts they got on didn't know anything. They were just saying the obvious thing. Oh, there's a fault in the backbone, right? So it was initially extremely simple an issue, but fair enough. In the thick of it, it's very difficult to think clearly. And that's what it was, okay? So do not commonalize or over-homogenize your network. especially the redundant aspects of your network. They must be based on different techniques, different protocols, if possible. Like if you're running IRGP protocol for routing, your redundant network should lean more heavily on border gateway protocol, if possible. If you're predominantly a Cisco shop, you should have other hardware providers like HP, Brocade, Juniper, Bay Networks, or other respected vendors governing at least half of that redundant network. Then they won't go down because they won't be affected. Even excellent hardware has design limitations and can suffer a black swan event triggered by unrelated, seemingly, contemporaneous circumstances which shouldn't have had that effect. But in this case it did. So the lesson for you and for me is have proper redundancy in your network. Redundancy based on exactly the same protocol, exactly the same hardware, exactly the same methodology is not redundancy, right? It's not. And that's what Optus suffered. They suffered from over-homogeneity in their network to a fault. And I'm sure they're correcting that now. And I lay the blame of a lack of independent verification of their network engineering. They've probably had it done by Cisco themselves. And you can't have mission-critical networks designed by vendor engineers. They're just not impartial. Okay, all right, so I hope that's helped you, and I do regret as I said, the resignation of a talented female executive. I can just imagine the hell on earth she went through that day, and I've been there myself when a mission-critical system's gone down, and you feel responsible. So we wish her all the best, but I don't lay the blame at her feet. She was in the midst of it battling, and even their top network engineers couldn't tell what the issue was. And now it's become clear, please don't make the Optus mistake in your own network. That's the huge takeaway. And if you're an auditor, a non-technical person from business continuity background, audit your organisation or your client. Make sure they haven't got over-reliance on one hardware platform. And you could save them hundreds of thousands of dollars. And in the Optus case, tens of millions of financial damage, reputational damage, and a real breach of trust. Thank you.